Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel that focuses on all the big IPOs. Today I have some updates on Airbnb and Ant Group that I wanted to share with you. Plus I really needed a break from all the election coverage, so doing a new video outside away from the TV and computer seemed like a good idea. And with some nice weather, I said to myself, let's hang out on the deck, get some sun, and talk some IPO news. As always, I want to start off by thanking the community for checking in again with me. And for everyone else that's new to the channel, my name is Kevin, and I want to welcome you to the channel for the first time. We spend a lot of time here talking about IPOs, so if this is something that you're interested in, we'd love to have you join the community. It's super easy, you just got to press that little red subscribe button. So as I mentioned earlier in the week, we didn't have a single US company on the IPO calendar because of the election, so I ended up doing something different by making a video on the only sector that was up in the S&P in October and what that might have been telling us. That video had more of an analytical perspective instead of me just sharing news, which I really enjoyed making, so I hope you checked it out, but if you missed it, I'll link it for you. Anyways, I was really clear in the beginning of that video when I said there was no US company having an IPO this week, because as we know, and I talked about it last week, we did expect the China-based Ant Group to have their record-setting IPO this week. Well, that didn't happen. It was initially set to happen on the 5th, but it ended up being postponed. And I want to quickly give you an update as to why it got halted and when it could be back on. But first, for those of you that need a quick introduction and update to Ant Group, it is the financial technology company that owns China's largest digital payment platform, Alipay, which has over 700 million active users and 80 million merchants. To give you an idea of how large the platform is, the company reports that Alipay had $17 trillion in transactions for the 12 months ended June 2020. Ant Group itself is affiliated with Jack Ma's Chinese e-commerce group, Alibaba, who will maintain about a 30% ownership stake in the company once it goes public. As for the IPO, Ant Group was set to raise around $34 billion, with its shares anticipated to be priced at $10.30 in US dollars. However, due to tensions between the US and China, particularly with the US administration threatening restrictions on Chinese companies, Ant made the decision to list on exchanges in Shanghai and Hong Kong instead of in the US. We talked about this last week about how this makes it a lot harder for US investors to buy shares, so I had shared some direct and indirect options to invest in the IPO. I'm not going to repeat that again here, but if you missed it, I'll link it for you in the description. So that gets us to this week. Heading into the week, there had been a lot of international demand in the IPO, so pricing was expected to be above that $10.30 that I had just mentioned. But all that momentum came to a halt when the Shanghai Stock Exchange said in a statement early this week that it had postponed the Ant Group IPO because of major issues that might cause the company to not meet the listing conditions or disclosure requirements. This news came out after the Chinese Central Bank and other Chinese government officials called in Ma and the Ant Group executives for talks on Monday. That decision in Shanghai led to the IPO listing in Hong Kong to also be pulled. As of now, we don't know when the IPO will get back on track, but there are some indications as to how long it could take, which I'll get to in a minute. One immediate result of the postponed IPO was that Alibaba shares dropped by 8% on Tuesday, and I'm sure that was painful to anyone who recently bought shares in Alibaba as a way to get into the Ant Group IPO, since unlike Ant, Alibaba is listed and traded on a US exchange. The concern going forward is that Ant Group may be facing more regulation in China than was initially anticipated. Ironically, or maybe not so ironically, the Shanghai Stock Exchange's announcement came about a week after Jack Ma publicly compared the nation's banks to pawn shops. It also criticized Chinese regulators for stifling innovation by being too aversive to risk. That public criticism seemed to result in the regulatory interviews that came on Monday. And all of this seems to add some bite to the Chinese Communist Party's new guidelines, published in September, that emphasized the need for what they call politically sensitive people in the private sector to firmly listen to the party and to follow the party. This action by the stock exchange makes it clear that the guidelines are more than just words, that they will be enforced, and that private companies will be more closely watched over. The big issue, and what could cause concern for potential investors in Ant Group, is to determine if China is trying to tilt the balance of power back to state-owned banks, or if it's that the regulators are more concerned about Ant's lending practices. Either way, this type of regulation can impact how potential investors evaluate the company, leading to a potentially lower valuation due to the regulatory risk. And this potential impact was only reinforced when China's state-run media said on Wednesday that a tougher regulatory stance should be seen as a sign that authorities want and intend to keep the country's largest tech companies in check. So right now, the Ant Group IPO is on hold, and there is no confirmed date as to when it will move forward. Some indications are that it could take up to at least 6 months before the IPO could be back on. So we'll just have to keep an eye on what happens. As I hear updates, I'll pass them on, so definitely turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any news that I have to share on its IPO. Now before we get to the latest news on Airbnb, I do want to ask you to please remember to press that like button if you're enjoying this video. It really helps the channel grow, as well as helps me know what companies you're most interested in me covering. And any help you can give me on growing is greatly appreciated by me. And also, when you clicked on this video, were you more interested in hearing about Airbnb or Ant Group? Let me know in the comments. So on to Airbnb, the company that really needs no introduction with its big-time brand name recognition and market leadership that so many of us have been waiting very patiently for the company to finally make their IPO official. Last week, I predicted they were on course to have their IPO in December, and now today, we have exclusive reporting from Reuters that says that will indeed happen. So for me, that just confirmed what I was expecting. But what was most exciting to me in the Reuters article is that it looks like we will finally get to see the company's filing, and that will happen sometime next week. Yes, finally, we finally get to see their IPO filing. I figured it would come out soon after the election, and this news confirms that. And obviously, once I get to look it over, I'll post a video that gives you the most important details within the filing itself. Up until this point, the only thing we knew regarding an Airbnb IPO filing was that the company had only filed a confidential draft registration statement on August 19th. As most of you know, we had expected the Airbnb IPO to happen much earlier in the year, but then of course, the pandemic put a halt to that as their business plummeted and their IPO plans were put on hold as concerns about the valuation rightfully took center stage. So much so that we learned from an interview with Pershing Square's Bill Ackman on Bloomberg TV that he had had preliminary discussions with Airbnb to take the company public through the SPAC route. At the time, he said that while Airbnb hadn't ruled out going public with the SPAC, he felt that the company would prefer to go public through a traditional IPO. But more recently, like last week recently, we heard that the company was planning to list on the NASDAQ, also cementing the likelihood of a sooner than later IPO. So while the indications were there for Airbnb having a traditional IPO, if their filing does come out to the public next week as is being reported, this obviously will confirm and predict the actual IPO to happen in December, most likely in the first half of the month. As always, when I have definitive dates for the IPO and when trading will begin, I will let you guys know. Again, another reason to have your notification bell for the channel turned on. As you guys have heard me say before, I'm really looking forward to seeing their filing and being able to examine the financials and see how well they have actually rebounded since the beginning of the pandemic. And there's a lot of evidence that they have come back pretty strong, but we'll see. One piece of evidence for a rebound in their business was that Airbnb itself said in July that customers had booked more than 1 million nights in a single day for the first time since March 3rd. The other thing that seems to have helped the company in its rebound is a perceived trend of how people are looking to travel to areas outside of the big urban and tourist areas, which also includes them being away from the big hotels where they could be exposed to hundreds of more people than in an Airbnb rental. Obviously, with the resurgence of the virus heading into the winter, rental trends will continue to be watched and examined closely by the company and potential investors. As we get closer to Airbnb's IPO, we've already talked about some really important information in another video on how the company was valued as recently as September 30th. For a little refresher, in that video, which again will be linked in the description, I had shared how the value of Airbnb shares had increased 10.4% from the end of the second quarter, and that each share was valued at $69.76 at the end of September. I had also mentioned reporting from Bloomberg on how Airbnb's board of directors had recently approved a 2-for-1 split of the company's currently private shares, which meant that the price of those private shares would effectively be $34.88 as of September 30th when you consider the stock split. To me, this was important for us to know because it gave me an idea what the share price was valued at on the private markets, and with that knowledge, I felt like it can help us get an idea what it might be worth, or at least what we might be willing to pay once it hits the public market. The guess right now is that Airbnb is looking to raise around $3 billion and that it could achieve a valuation of more than $30 billion in the IPO. With so much interest you guys have expressed in Airbnb in other videos I've done and in the comments, I can tell you that I have a lot of information and videos that I'll share with you as the company moves forward with their IPO. So there you go on Airbnb. Needless to say, we'll have a lot more of the company's IPO on the channel. And remember to let me know in the comments if you were more interested in hearing about Airbnb or Ant Group when you decide to click on the video. Next week, we'll get back to our traditional IPO This Week episode, and then as soon as I have a chance to see Airbnb's filing, I'll share what's in it with you, so stay tuned. As you guys might be able to tell, the sun is getting lower. Really don't like how the days are getting shorter this time of year. And once it's dark, I'm going to have to go check in on the election results. I know, I don't have to, but I will. But But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please remember to hit that like button and share with your friends and on any of your social media sites and forums you're on. It's just so much more important for helping grow the channel than I ever knew. And again, if you're new to the channel or just an occasional visitor and you like what we did here, we'd love to have you join the community. Remember, it doesn't cost a thing to subscribe. Until next time, thank you again for watching and have a great day.